A young billionaire sees two poor twin girls selling a teddy bear on the sidewalk. He asks, "What's the money for?" And one of them answers, "We want to buy flowers for Mum's grave." Today marks 1 year since she became a star. But when the billionaire sees her photo, he's shocked and breaks down in tears. Jasper Reeves' breakfast was always the same. Whole wheat toast, coffee with no sugar, and the latest stock market news on his phone. His penthouse apartment offered a breathtaking view of the city, but he rarely took notice. Why bother? Scenery didn't make stocks go up. That morning, while adjusting his Italian tie in the mirror, he allowed himself a rare moment of self-reflection. 33 years old, a billionaire, and no company other than the echo of his own footsteps in that empty apartment. Not that he cared. Relationships were complicated, time-consuming, and usually ended badly. His last one, with Camilla, proved it. His driver was already waiting in the garage. In the car, Jasper answered 20 emails before even arriving at the Reeve Enterprises building. It would be a long day, 3 board meetings, a video conference with Chinese investors, and reviewing the contract for buying a promising startup. "Mr. Reeve, and your first meeting starts in 10 minutes, his assistant warned the moment he stepped into the office. Jasper just nodded. Words were too valuable a resource to waste. In the conference room, men and women in suits awaited him with tense smiles. He did not smile back. He sat at the head of the table and cut right to the chase. "Last quarter's numbers are below expectations. I want explanations." The next 2 hours were filled with charts, justifications, and promises. Jasper listened to it all with the neutral expression that had become his trademark in business circles. Some called it coldness, others called it focus. To him, it was merely efficiency. When the meeting ended, it was already past noon. Jasper declined the director's lunch invitation. He preferred to eat alone in his office while reviewing documents. Food was fuel, not pleasure. The afternoon followed its predictable course until the meeting with the Chinese investors. The deal was closed without major hurdles. Another few million added to the company's already abundant account, a few more zeros to his personal fortune, which Jasper barely had time to spend. "Anything else for today?" he asked his assistant as he finally left the last meeting. "No, sir. Your day is over." He checked his watch. Nearly 7 at night. He could go home, but why bother? The empty apartment offered nothing but silence. He decided to walk a bit before calling his driver, a rare impulse, one he didn't even understand himself. The street was busy, people returning to their families, couples laughing at cafe tables, children running along the sidewalk, life happening all around him while he passed by like a ghost, invisible in his expensive suit. That's when he saw them, 2 little girls sitting on a park bench with a makeshift cardboard box in front of them. Inside it was a single brown teddy bear with a handmade price sign. Something about that scene made Jasper stop. The girls were identical. Same dark brown hair, same big eyes, the same hopeful look when they noticed him watching. "Want to buy our teddy bear, mister?" one of them asked, pointing to the worn-out toy. Jasper hesitated. Social interactions outside the business world weren't his forte, but something about these children kept him rooted to the sidewalk. "What's the money for?" he asked, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. The girls looked at each other, as if silently consulting one another. The one who seemed more talkative replied, "We want to buy flowers for our mom's grave. Today marks 1 year since she became a star." The answer caught Jasper off guard. He'd expected to hear about toys, candy, or any other childlike whim. Not this. Not death. Not pain. "Call your mother," he began, not knowing how to finish the sentence. The other girl, who had remained silent until then, opened a small cloth purse and took out a slightly crumpled photo. "This is her. She was the most beautiful mom in the world," she said, extending the photo to Jasper. He took the picture with suddenly trembling fingers. And then, the world seemed to freeze around him. The face on the glossy paper was one he knew all too well. Camilla, her wide smile, the expressive eyes, the small mole near her lip. Camilla, who had walked out of his life 3 years ago, without explanation. Camilla, whom he'd tried to forget by diving deeper into work. Jasper felt the air being sucked from his lungs. A strange buzzing filled his ears. The girls watched him curiously, not understanding the transformation on his face. He looked at them again, now with new eyes. The shape of their faces, the outline of their eyes, even the slight tilt of their heads as they waited for his response. How had he not noticed before? They were miniature versions of Camilla. "Used to, what are your names?" he asked, his voice nearly failing. "I'm Mira," said the more talkative girl. "And I'm Noah," the other one added shyly. "Mira and Noah, Camilla's daughters, twins." Jasper's mind raced frantically, making calculations he didn't want to complete. Camilla had left his life 3 years ago. The girls looked so small. Could it be possible? With trembling hands, he returned the photo and, without thinking, pulled out his wallet. There were several large bills inside. He took them all, not bothering to count, and placed them in the box beside the teddy bear. "Take it. Buy the prettiest flowers you can find." The girl's eyes went wide at the amount of money. "But, mister, that's too much money." "And the teddy bear?" Mira asked, confused. "Keep it, and keep the money," Jasper replied, already walking away. He had to get out of there. He needed to think. The world around him felt distorted, unreal. He walked quickly, not looking back, not hearing the surprised thanks from the girls. When he turned the corner, away from the curious gaze of the children, Jasper leaned against a wall, feeling his legs weaken. His heart pounded like never before. For the first time in years, the man who controlled financial empires with a mere nod felt completely lost. "Camilla," he murmured to himself. "What did you do?" Night fell over the city as Jasper remained there, motionless. A man who always knew exactly what he wanted out of life, now confronted with a truth he could never have predicted. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes. During that entire time, Jasper couldn't stop thinking about the girls. He barely slept. Ate poorly, missed 2 important meetings, unthinkable in his meticulously organized life. His assistant even asked if he was ill. Maybe he was. A strange fever not measured by thermometers, a restlessness no medicine could cure. On the 3rd day, he couldn't take it anymore. He had to see them again to confirm they were real, that he hadn't imagined everything. After work, he dismissed his driver and walked to the place where he'd found them. Part of him hoped the girls wouldn't be there, that it was just a cruel coincidence, a trick of his tired mind. But as he turned the corner, his heart raced. There they were, sitting on the same bench. Jasper hesitated. What would he say? How would he explain his strange behavior the other day? He took a deep breath, nervously adjusted his tie, and approached. Mira saw him first. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "Look, Noah, it's the money man," she exclaimed, nudging her sister. Noah, more timid, just smiled and gave a small wave. "Hi," Jasper said, feeling strangely awkward. Powerful executives trembled before him, but here, in front of 2 small children, he felt intimidated. "Actually, I just wanted to know if you managed to buy the flowers for your mum." The girls exchanged glances and smiled, as if sharing a secret. "Yes, we bought a bunch of pretty flowers," Mira replied excitedly. "White roses, which were her favorites, and daisies too," Noah added, speaking for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost musical. "Mom used to say daisies are stars that fell from the sky." Jasper felt a lump in his throat. Camilla always had a way of turning ordinary things into something magical. He remembered her gazing at the night sky, inventing stories for each star. At the time, he found it silly, a waste of time. Now, the memory hit him with a longing he hadn't known he could feel. May I sit down?" he asked, indicating the empty space on the bench. The girls scooted over a bit, making room. Jasper sat, uncomfortable, unsure how to continue the conversation. "What are your names again?" he asked, pretending not to remember, trying to hide his anxiety. "I'm Mira," said the more talkative one, pointing to herself with her thumb. "And she's my sister, Noah. You're twins, right?" They nodded in unison, making the same head movement. It was almost hypnotic. "Identical?" Mira said proudly. "Only Mom could always tell us apart. And now Mrs. Elsa sometimes. Who's Mrs. Elsa? Jasper asked, though he already suspected the answer. She's our neighbor. We live with her now, Noah explained, fiddling with the hem of her simple but clean dress. After Mom became a star, Mrs. Elsa took care of us, Mira added. She's really nice, cooks tasty meals, and tells us bedtime stories. She's very old, Noah noted, as though it were an admirable quality. She has wrinkles all over her face and hair as white as snow. Jasper absorbed every word, every detail. These children, possibly his daughters, were living with an elderly woman, likely surviving on her kindness. And do you like living with her? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. The girls nodded, but Jasper noticed a fleeting shadow pass over their eyes. She's very kind, Mira said, but the house is small and has leaks when it rains hard. And sometimes the food runs out before the end of the month, Noah murmured so softly Jasper almost didn't hear. Then we only eat bread with butter. But it's okay, Mira quickly added, as if afraid of sounding ungrateful. Mrs. Elsa makes the bread special by cutting it into different shapes. And she lets us sleep in her bed when it's really cold, Noah finished. Jasper felt something strange in his chest, a pain not physical but penetrating every inch of his being. These children, in their worn-out dresses and easy smiles, had almost nothing, and yet they spoke with such gratitude. Do you, go to school? He asked, trying to grasp the full situation. The girls shook their heads. We really want to, Mira sighed. There's a nice school near our house. But Mrs. Elsa doesn't have money to pay, Noah explained. She already spends everything she has on food and rent. She teaches us at home, Mira added, trying to sound cheerful. We already know how to read a little. And count to 100, Noah said, showing her fingers. Jasper felt a tightening in his heart. While he swam in money, these children didn't even have access to basic education. Mrs. Elsa does the best she can, Mira said, as if sensing Jasper's worried expression. She says one day she'll manage to get us in school. We just have to be patient. She knits to sell, Noah explained, but her hands hurt a lot because of her rheumatism, and she needs to buy expensive medication, Mira added. That's why school has to wait. The simplicity and purity of their words made Jasper feel small, insignificant, despite all his wealth and power. What were his millions compared to the dignity of these children who accepted their difficult circumstances without losing hope? Do you miss your mom? He asked before he could stop himself. Both fell silent for a moment. Noah answered first. Every day, especially at bedtime, she used to sing for us. But we know she's looking down on us, Mira said, pointing to the sky. Mrs. Elsa says good people become bright stars when they go away, and Mum was the best person in the world. Jasper swallowed hard. The mention of the sky made him instinctively glance upward, though it was still daylight with no stars in sight. And, do you know anything about your dad? He asked, his heart pounding so hard he feared the girls might hear it. Mira shrugged. Mom used to say he was a busy man who couldn't stay with us, but maybe one day. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Jasper understood what Camilla had told her daughters, a gentle lie to protect them from rejection, or maybe a hope she herself had kept alive. Silence fell between them, heavy as a winter blanket. Jasper didn't know what to say or do. Part of him wanted to scoop them into his arms, tell them everything, take them to his luxurious home right that second. Another part, the rational one, knew it couldn't be that simple. He wasn't sure of anything yet, and even if they were his daughters, which seemed increasingly likely, he had no idea how to be a father. I need to go, he said finally, rising from the bench. But I'll come back to see you tomorrow, okay? The girls nodded, not questioning why a well-dressed stranger wanted to see them again. To them, maybe he was just a kind adult who cared about their story. Jasper cast one last look at the twins before leaving. With their simple dresses and sincere smiles, they represented a world so different from his. A world that somehow seemed to be calling out to him, like distant stars finally finding a way to shine light into his dark, solitary life. 3 knocks on the door, soft, hesitant. Mrs. Elsa dried her hands on a worn-out apron and frowned. She wasn't expecting visitors at that hour. The girls were playing in the small backyard, and dinner, a modest vegetable stew, was simmering on the stove. Upon opening the door, she found a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit that seemed absurdly out of place in that simple neighborhood. Her tired eyes widened for a moment, in silent recognition. "Jasper Reeve," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. Jasper felt his stomach drop. How did she know his name? He had no time to ask. "I was wondering when you'd show up," the elderly woman continued, opening the door wider. "Come in. The girls are in the back. They don't need to hear this." He stepped inside, feeling like a giant in the small living room. The house was clean, organized, but the signs of poverty were everywhere. A patched-up couch, a wobbly-legged table, peeling walls. In one corner, a tiny improvised altar displayed a photo of Camilla, surrounded by faded plastic flowers and a half-burned candle. "Did they recognize you?" Mrs. Elsa asked, indicating a chair for Jasper to sit. "No," he replied. "How do you know who I am?" The older woman sighed, sitting down with visible difficulty, her joints protesting. For a moment, she just studied Jasper's face, as if searching for something specific there. "Camilla had a photo of you. She kept it hidden in a book. When the girls asked about their dad, sometimes she looked at that photo, but she never showed them." Jasper swallowed. "The girls, they're your daughters," Mrs. Elsa finished, her voice unwavering. "Anyone with eyes can see it. They have your jawline, you know, and that little frown when they're concentrating." Silence filled the room. Outside, the distant sound of children's laughter seemed to come from another world, another reality. "I didn't know," he finally said. His words sounded hollow, insufficient. "I figured as much. Camilla was too stubborn to tell you. Why didn't she ever say anything? Why didn't she ask for help? I could have—" "Could you?" Mrs. Elsa interrupted, raising one eyebrow. There was no accusation in her voice, only genuine inquiry. Jasper didn't reply. Would he really have helped? The man he was 3 years ago, obsessed with his career, with his financial empire. Would he have taken the news with anything but annoyance? Would he have seen the children as anything more than an inconvenience? "She left something for you, Mrs. Elsa said, standing up with effort. "Wait here." The older woman disappeared through a door, returning minutes later with a yellowed envelope, slightly creased at the edges. "I found it among her things after she passed. It has your name on it." Jasper took the envelope with trembling hands. His name, written in Camilla's delicate handwriting, seemed almost accusatory on that aged paper. "May I?" he asked, indicating the envelope. Mrs. Elsa nodded. "That's why I kept it. I'll see how the girls are doing." Alone now, Jasper carefully tore open the envelope. Inside were several sheets of thin paper covered in the handwriting he once knew so well. "Jasper, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. And somehow you've discovered Mira and Noah, our daughters, ours, a word I never used out loud. When I found out I was pregnant, 3 months after we broke up, I thought about telling you. I even picked up the phone a few times. But then I remembered all the times you said kids weren't in your plans. That your company was your only priority. That having a family would only hinder your rise. Maybe it was cowardice on my part, or wounded pride, or just a protective instinct. Not for me, but for the 2 lives growing inside me. The pregnancy was hard. Twins always are, the doctors said, but I would give anything to go through it again. Because when they were born, Jasper, when I saw their faces for the first time, I understood what real love is. In the first few months, I thought about seeking you out. They were so small, so helpless, and I was so tired, so alone. But then I remembered your expression when you talked about children, that mix of discomfort and impatience, and I decided to wait a bit longer. A bit turned into months. Months turned into years, and the more time passed, the harder it became to imagine how to tell you. The girls started asking about their dad. I made up stories. I said you were far away, working, that maybe one day you'd come meet them. I couldn't bring myself to say you didn't even know they existed. It felt too cruel, not to you, but to them. Now that I'm gone, I wonder what will happen to my little stars. Mrs. Elsa promised to care for them, but she's old. She has little money. The girls deserve more: education, opportunities, a house without leaky roofs. I'm not writing this to blame you or to ask you for anything. I just think you have the right to know. They are your daughters, Jasper. They have your eyes, your stubborn jaw, and beneath all that sweetness they got from me, yes, I'm taking credit for it, there's a bit of your determination, your strength. If you decide to be part of their lives, please do it wholeheartedly. They've already lost one mother. They don't deserve a half-time father. A father who shows up occasionally with expensive gifts to ease his guilt. If you can't be a real father, present, available, involved, maybe it's better they keep the stories I told them. A distant dad who might come back one day is better than a real dad who appears and disappears whenever it's convenient. I'm not here to see your decision. But know that, despite everything, I never stopped believing there's goodness in you, hidden beneath all those layers of ambition and self-sufficiency. The girls are the best part of both of us, Jasper. The only truly important thing I've ever done in my life. Take care of them, or let them go on without the confusion of your intermittent presence. With love, still, Camilla. Jasper let the letter fall onto his lap, feeling as though each word was a physical blow. Breathing became difficult, as if the small room's air were suddenly insufficient. 3 years. 3 years he could have known his daughters, could have seen their first steps, heard their first words. Could have been by Camilla's side when they were born, held her hand, shared that moment, all lost, because he was, what? A man obsessed with power and control, a man who saw relationships as distractions, a man who, by his own words at the time, had no time for diapers and bottles. When Mrs. Elsa returned to the room, she found Jasper with his face buried in his hands, shoulders slumped in visible defeat. "She was right about me," he murmured, not lifting his face. "I would have been a terrible father." The older woman sat again, letting out a tired sigh. "Maybe. Back then. But now, who knows?" "What do you mean?" "The Jasper Camilla described wouldn't be here right now. He wouldn't have noticed the girls on that park bench. He wouldn't have come back to see them again. And he certainly wouldn't be crying in my living room." Jasper realized, surprised, that silent tears were indeed running down his face. He hadn't cried since. He couldn't remember, years, decades perhaps. "What should I do?" he asked, feeling absurdly young and lost. "That's up to you," Mrs. Elsa replied, with the wisdom of someone who had witnessed many lives unfold. "But if you decide to be in their lives, remember what Camilla wrote. All or nothing. They've lost too much already." Jasper nodded, folding the letter carefully and slipping it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, close to his heart. "Can I see them before I go?" Mrs. Elsa smiled for the first time. "Of course. They're in the backyard, but don't say anything yet. Take it slow." He followed the older woman to the back door. From there, he could see Mira and Noah playing on a small makeshift swing hanging from a spindly tree. They laughed as if the world were perfect, as if they lacked nothing. Bathed in the golden afternoon light, they looked almost ethereal, like little angels. His daughters. The thought now came with a strange mix of terror and wonder. "Come back tomorrow," Mrs. Elsa suggested. "Bring a children's book, maybe. They love stories." Jasper nodded, unable to take his eyes off the girls. He wanted to memorize every detail, to make up for all the lost time. "Thank you," he finally said, turning to the older woman. "For caring for them. For keeping the letter." Mrs. Elsa shrugged. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for them. And for Camilla." "Even so, thank you." On the way back home, Jasper barely noticed the streets or people. His mind was filled with images of Camilla pregnant, alone. Camilla holding 2 babies. Camilla telling her daughters stories about a dad who wasn't there, but might be one day. He arrived at his luxurious building. The driver had to call his name twice when they reached his tower. The apartment, always so impeccable and cold, now felt like a mausoleum for an empty life. Expensive furniture without meaning, vast spaces without a soul. Sitting in his exclusive designer armchair, overlooking the city lights, Jasper pulled out the letter and read it again. And again, and once more, until each word was etched into his memory. "I'm their father," he said aloud, testing how the words sounded. Strange, scary, and yet undeniably true. What would he do now? Tell the girls the truth. But how to explain 3 years of absence? How to tell 2 small children that their father never knew they existed, too busy closing deals while they grew up without the privileges his money could provide? Or should he walk away? Leave them with their stories of a distant dad who might return one day? That would be less confusing, less painful for them. But more painful for him. Because now that he knew them, now that he knew the truth, how could he simply erase their existence? Jasper stood and walked to the huge window of his apartment. Down below, the city maintained its frenetic pace. People coming and going, lights switching on and off, lives following their predetermined paths. For so long, he believed his place was above all that, looking down, controlling his part of the world with cold detachment. Now, for the first time, he felt disconnected from that lofty view. His place, perhaps, was down there, in the midst of the mess, the imperfection, real life, at the side of 2 little girls who had no idea who he was. He picked up his phone and did something he had never done before, cancelled all the next day's meetings. His assistant, on the other end of the line, seemed so shocked she couldn't even object. Jasper Reeve never cancelled meetings. Jasper Reeve never took time off. Jasper Reeve never put anything above business until now. He spent the night pacing through the empty apartment like a ghost. In one of the guest rooms, never used, he imagined how it might look if transformed into a kid's bedroom. Bright colors on the walls instead of sophisticated gray, stuffed animals on the bed instead of imported silk pillows, laughter echoing down the halls instead of the sepulchral silence that always greeted him. It seemed like an impossible dream, and at the same time, strangely real, as if an alternate version of his life was finally emerging from the shadows where Camilla had hidden it. In the early morning, he called his lawyer. Ignoring the man's protests about being woken up so early, he cut to the chase. "I need to know what to do to legally acknowledge the paternity of 2 girls." "What?" The lawyer sounded genuinely confused. "You have daughters?" "Yes, and I want them to know it." After hanging up, Jasper felt a strange lightness, as though speaking those words aloud to someone else finally made him accept the truth. He was a father. Father to Mira and Noah. Father to 2 little girls who sold a teddy bear to buy flowers for their mother's grave. The irony wasn't lost on him. For years, he shaped his life to avoid exactly this. Emotional responsibilities, ties he couldn't control, commitments he couldn't simply terminate with a well-drafted contract clause. And now, the only thing he wanted was to dive headlong into this new world, unknown and terrifying. When the sun started to rise, casting a golden glow over the city, Jasper finally allowed himself to lie on the couch. Not to sleep, he was far from rest, but to let his exhausted body relax after the emotions of the previous day. With the first rays of sun warming his face, he made his decision. He would be part of the girls' lives. Not as the wealthy savior who suddenly appeared to solve every material problem, not as a stranger who tried to buy affection with expensive gifts, but as a man learning to be a father, step by step. It would be difficult, confusing, probably painful. But for the first time in his life, Jasper Reeve was willing to embark on a journey with no guarantee of success. Camilla's words echoed in his mind. All or nothing. He chose all. With every mistake, every stumble, every imperfection that might come along. When the phone rang, it was his assistant, concerned about his absence. "Are you all right, Mr. Reeve? I've never seen you cancel an entire day of commitments." "I'm fine," he replied, with a calm he didn't truly feel. "I just need to take care of some personal matters." "Personal," she repeated, as if the word were in a foreign language. "Yes, personal. Family matters, actually." After hanging up, Jasper allowed himself a small smile. Family. A word that had never been part of his vocabulary, a word that now was starting to gain meaning. With the morning light illuminating the apartment, he took a long shower, chose simple clothes, jeans and a shirt instead of his usual suit, and went out. On the way, he stopped at a bookstore and bought a few children's books, following Mrs. Elsa's suggestion. He was nervous more than before any major deal. This, after all, was the biggest deal of his life, winning the hearts of two little girls. For the first time in his adult life, Jasper Reeve, the man who always had all the answers, found himself utterly lost. No instruction manual, no strategic plan, no guaranteed success. But strangely, he had never felt more alive. The morning after his visit to Mrs. Elsa, Jasper woke with a clear purpose. Before having coffee, he called his assistant. "I need you to cancel my afternoon meetings. I have an unmissable personal commitment." The silence on the other end revealed the woman's shock. In 10 years working for him, she had never heard him prioritize anything personal. "Is there a problem, Mr. Reeve?" "No. For the first time in a long while, there's no problem at all." He hung up and stared out of the panoramic window at the city below, people rushing to work, just as he had done every day of his adult life. Today, however, his urgency was driven by something else. Before heading to the modest neighborhood where the girls lived, Jasper did something he'd never imagined. Walked into a toy store. He felt completely out of place among the bright and noisy shelves. A saleswoman approached, smiling. "Can I help you? Are you looking for something for your children?" The word children caused a strange warmth in his chest. "Yes," he replied, surprised at how natural the word felt in his mouth. "Two girls." He left the store with a full bag, colored pencils, coloring books, 2 notebooks covered in stars, and, on impulse, 2 little snow globes that, when shaken, would make it snow over miniature cityscapes. On the way to the modest neighborhood where the girls lived, Jasper realized he was as nervous as a teenager. What if they didn't like the gifts? What if Mrs. Elsa thought he was trying to buy the girls' affection? What if... He took a deep breath. He, who negotiated millions without blinking, was sweating over some toys and the prospect of spending the afternoon with 2 small children. When he arrived at the house, it was Mira who opened the door. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "The money man is back," she called inside, making Jasper chuckle at the nickname. Noah appeared behind her, quieter but with a curious sparkle in her eyes. "I brought you some things," he said, extending the bag. The girls looked to Mrs. Elsa, who appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron as if asking permission. "Go ahead, take them," she nodded. "And what do we say when someone gives us something?" "Thank you," they exclaimed in unison, taking the bag with a reverent kind of care. Jasper watched as they opened each item like it was a priceless treasure. To him, they were just small things, bought without much thought. To them, every pencil was a reason for exclamations of joy. "Look, Noah! There's even a gold one," Mira pointed excitedly. "And silver," Noah added, running her finger gently over the metallic pencil. When they got to the snow globes, their delight was total. Mira immediately shook hers, laughing at the little white flakes falling over the miniature Paris. Noah, more careful, examined hers first before shaking it softly. "That's London," Jasper explained, pointing to Noah's globe. "And Mira's is Paris. They're cities in Europe." "Are there tiny people living in there?" Mira asked, peering intently. Jasper laughed. "No, they're just models. But in the real cities, yes, many people live there." "Have you been there?" Noah asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Yes, many times. What's it like?" Both sets of eyes gleamed with curiosity. And so, sitting on the floor of the small living room, Jasper found himself describing his travels. He spoke of the Eiffel Tower, Big Ben, ancient castles, and old plazas. The girls listened, fascinated, asking questions he'd never imagined hearing from such young children. "Do people there eat different foods? What are the kids like there? Are there playgrounds in those cities?" The afternoon flew by. Before he knew it, he was sitting at the small kitchen table, sharing a simple snack Mrs. Elsa had prepared, bread with butter and sweetened tea. "You tell cool stories," Mira said, chewing her bread. "Better than Mrs. Elsa's old book." "Mira," the older woman chided gently. "That's not polite." "But it's true," the girl insisted. "Her book only has silly princesses waiting for princes. Your stories are about real places." Jasper smiled, exchanging a glance with Mrs. Elsa over the children's heads. "There's a festival this weekend in the neighborhood," the elderly woman commented. "Her little fair at the local park. The girls are excited to go. There'll be cotton candy," Mira explained, as if that was the most important thing in the world. "And music," Noah added. "Mrs. Elsa said maybe we can dance a little." Jasper felt an idea forming, an opportunity. "May I take them?" he asked, looking at Mrs. Elsa. The older woman studied him for a moment. "I'd be going too, of course." "Of course," he agreed quickly. "I just thought that you could start being part of their routine," she finished, understanding more than he actually said. He nodded, grateful for her insight. "You're really going to take her?" Mira asked, jumping in her seat. "Will you buy cotton candy?" "And balloons," Jasper promised, smiling at her enthusiasm. "You're nice," Noah stated, surprising everyone with her directness. The usually shy girl looked at him with an almost adult seriousness. "Mom would have liked you." The comment hit Jasper like a punch to the gut. The children's certainty, the simplicity of the observation, and the mention of Camilla, all of it condensed into a knot of emotion he could barely hide. "I hope so," he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. When he said goodbye, promising to return on the weekend for the fair, Jasper felt something odd, a reluctance to leave, to abandon that small, cozy house and return to his empty, impersonal apartment. "You'll really come back?" Mira asked, clinging to the doorframe. "Promise." "I promise," he answered, with a seriousness he usually reserved for the most important contracts. That weekend, Jasper arrived earlier than scheduled. He brought not just his fulfilled promise, but also a basket of fresh fruit, chocolates, and some basic items he'd noticed the house lacked. "You shouldn't have," said the older woman, though her eyes shone with gratitude. The girls were too excited about the fair to notice the basket. They wore their best dresses, a bit short, a bit faded, but clean and carefully ironed. Mrs. Elsa had braided their hair, tied with colorful ribbons. "You look beautiful," Jasper praised them, feeling a wave of pride he wasn't sure he had the right to feel. The festival was simple: a few food stalls, improvised games, a small local band playing cheerful tunes. For Mira and Noah, though, it might as well have been the most extraordinary event in the world. Jasper bought everything he'd promised: cotton candy, balloons, and even popcorn and small toys they won at the ring toss. Mrs. Elsa walked a bit behind, observing with watchful but increasingly relaxed eyes. Then the band started playing a more upbeat song, and it happened. Mira, without warning, grabbed Jasper's hand and pulled him to the center of the park, where some people were dancing. "Come on," she insisted. "Let's dance." Jasper Reeve, CEO of Reeve Enterprises, the man who dominated boardrooms with his imposing presence, found himself completely disconcerted in the middle of a public park, trying to follow the clumsy movements of a small child. Noah, initially hesitant, eventually joined them, holding Jasper's other hand. And there, surrounded by ordinary people who had no idea who he was, Jasper danced, awkwardly, badly, but with a freedom he'd never experienced. He laughed, loudly, without worrying about appearances or expectations. He spun the girls, lifted them in the air, felt their little bodies vibrate with joy against his chest when he hugged them. When the music stopped, he noticed Mrs. Elsa watching from the sidelines with a knowing smile, as if she saw beyond the surface, understanding something he was only just discovering. That afternoon marked the start of a new routine. Jasper reorganized his entire schedule, delegated meetings, postponed trips, all so he could spend a few hours, 3 or 4 times a week, at the small house in the modest neighborhood. He always brought something: food, school supplies, small gifts, but soon realized the most important thing was his presence. The girls waited eagerly, running to the window at the first sign of his arrival. "Which book are you reading today?" Mira would ask, always direct. "Can you do different voices for each character?" Noah would request, slowly emerging from her shyness. He read, did voices, and told made-up stories. He sat on the floor, forgetting all about his expensive suits. He built card towers that inevitably collapsed between giggles. He drew badly, and was applauded as if he were a great artist. In return, the girls drew for him. Colorful, imperfect pictures that Jasper guarded more carefully than any million-dollar contract. In his office, hidden in a drawer only he opened, a small treasure was accumulating. Jasper with blue hair, Mira's depiction. Jasper with wings, Noah's. Jasper as a giant, holding two tiny girls in his hands. One afternoon, he arrived later than usual, after a difficult meeting. He found the girls already in pajamas, almost bedtime. "You took a while," Mira said, although she didn't sound truly upset. "We drew a picture of you." Noah, more observant, asked, "Are you sad today?" The question caught him off guard. He was so used to hiding emotions, he was surprised by the child's perception. "A little tired," he admitted. "It was a tough day at work." Without a word, Noah left the room and returned with one of her snow globes, the one featuring London. She placed it in Jasper's hands. "When I feel sad, I watch the snow fall. Then it goes away." The simple, pure gesture nearly shattered his composure. There, in that modest room, a little girl who barely knew him offered comfort in the only way she understood. Jasper shook the globe, watching the tiny flakes swirl around the miniature London, and, oddly enough, he felt the day's weariness melt away. "It's working," he said, making Noah smile with shy pride. In the weeks that followed, Jasper became a constant presence in the girls' lives. He was no longer the money man, but the nice guy, a title he valued more than any executive position. Sometimes he caught himself watching them when they were unaware. Mira's scrunched nose when she concentrated on a tough drawing, identical to his own expression. Noah's slight head tilt when listening to a story, just like Camilla did. His daughters. He still wasn't sure how or when he would tell them the truth, but something inside him had changed irreversibly. The man who felt nothing, who lived only for work and material success, was discovering a new kind of wealth, one that couldn't be measured by money or power, a silent love, not yet named, but powerful enough to transform him completely. And although to the girls he was just a kind friend who had mysteriously appeared in their lives, for Jasper, they were now the center of his universe, a universe that, for the first time, truly mattered. The day started like any other in this new routine Jasper had built over the past few weeks. He woke up early, handled some urgent matters by phone, and left to buy donuts, the girls' favorite treat, a fact he'd learned recently. He parked the car a few blocks away from Mrs. Elsa's house, preferring to walk the neighborhood he now knew well. Neighbors waved, recognizing him. The man in the suit who visits the twins was no longer a curiosity, but part of the local scene. But inside, Jasper was a volcano of anxiety. Today would be the day. After sleepless nights, talks with his lawyer, and long discussions with Mrs. Elsa, he had decided he could no longer delay the truth. The girls deserved to know. He deserved the chance to be more than just a friend who came with gifts and stories. He arrived at the humble house with his heart pounding. Mrs. Elsa greeted him with a look that mixed understanding and apprehension. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, while the girls ran over to hug him. Jasper nodded. He wasn't sure about anything, except that he could no longer live this lie of omission. "I brought donuts," he announced, holding up the colorful box, buying a few minutes of normalcy before the storm he knew was coming. The girls cheered, dragging him to the small kitchen table. Mira chatted about a book Mrs. Elsa had been reading to them, while Noah silently arranged the napkins with meticulous precision, a habit Jasper recognized as something they'd inherited from him. During the brief meal, he studied them intently, their gestures, their expressions, their distinct ways of being. Mira, outspoken, chatty, exuding the confidence he used in boardrooms. Noah, observant, careful, noticing details others missed. The two sides of his personality split into two small beings who ate donuts with an innocent joy, unaware of the bomb about to drop into their little world. "Can we go to the park later?" Mira asked, powdered sugar on her lips. "There's a new swing." "Actually," Jasper began, exchanging a glance with Mrs. Elsa, who nodded discreetly, "I wanted to talk to you about something important today." "Is it a surprise?" Mira immediately perked up. "A secret?" Noah asked, more perceptive, sensing the tension in the air. "Not exactly," Jasper said, feeling his throat go dry. "It's about me, and about your mom." Silence fell over the kitchen like a heavy blanket. The girls watched him with newly focused curiosity. "You knew our mum?" Mira asked, furrowing her brow. Jasper nodded, taking a deep breath. "Maybe it's better if we go to the living room," Mrs. Elsa suggested pragmatically. Minutes later, they were sitting on the worn couch, the girls side by side, gazing at him expectantly. Mrs. Elsa in an armchair in the corner, a silent yet reassuring presence, and Jasper sitting before them, feeling more vulnerable than ever. "Yes, I knew your mum," he began carefully. "Camilla and we met a long time ago, before you were born." "Were you friends?" Noah asked, gripping her sister's hand as if sensing they would need each other. "We were more than friends," Jasper answered, feeling his heart speed up. "We dated for almost 2 years." The girls' eyes went wide. This alone was a shock, revealing a piece of their mother's life they'd never known. She had dated someone, had a love life they'd never imagined. "Did you love each other?" Mira asked, blunt as always. The question hit Jasper hard. He had prepared to explain the logistics, the timeline, the paternity, not to talk about love. "Yes," he replied, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. "We loved each other, but sometimes love isn't enough. I was different then, very focused on work, on making money, and your mum wanted other things." "So you fought?" Noah deduced, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not exactly fought. More like we drifted apart. We decided to go different ways. I stayed with my company, and she moved on with her life." Jasper paused, summoning courage for the next step. "The hardest part. What do you know about your dad?" The sisters looked at each other with that silent communication only twins seem to have. "Mom said he worked far away," Mira replied. "That maybe one day he'd come back. She said he was busy but good," Noah added. "That he couldn't stay with us, but he thought about us." Each word was like a stab of guilt. Camilla, even hurt and alone, never tarnished his image for the girls. She gave them an absent father, but one worthy of respect, a man who, one day, might return. And here he was, finally returning, years too late. "When your mom and I separated," Jasper continued, voice trembling slightly, "she didn't know she was pregnant. Or maybe she did, but thought, I wouldn't be a good dad." The girls stared at him with unreadable expressions, small faces trying to process information far too big for them. "She never told me about you. I never knew I had daughters." The silence that followed was deafening. Jasper could almost see gears turning in their minds, connecting dots, forming a new understanding of reality. It was Noah, always the most intuitive, who gave voice to what both had already concluded. "You're our dad." 3 simple words, a direct question. For Jasper, it was the most defining moment of his life. "Yes," he replied, voice nearly cracking. "I'm your father." Time seemed to freeze. The girls remained still, eyes locked on him as if seeing him for the first time, and in a way, they were. No longer the nice man who showed up mysteriously. Now the man who should have been there all along. The man who, for reasons they didn't fully understand, wasn't. "Why didn't you come before?" Mira asked, her voice strangely contained for a usually expressive child. "Because I didn't know you existed," Jasper replied, feeling the weight of the truth. "I only found out when I saw you selling that teddy bear and saw your mom's photo. But after you knew," Mira insisted, "you didn't tell us." I needed time," he admitted. "I had to be sure, and I wanted you to know me a little before finding out who I really was." "So you lied," Noah concluded, her soft voice suddenly firm. The accusation, so simple and direct, hit Jasper like a bolt of lightning. In his corporate world, lies were strategies, tactical omissions, negotiating moves. But here, under the gaze of 2 children, there were no euphemisms. "Yes," he admitted, feeling he owed them at least this honesty, "I didn't tell you the whole truth. And I'm very sorry." Jasper expected tears, shouting, maybe even excitement. some of the many reactions he'd imagined during sleepless nights. Instead, he got what he was least prepared for: silence, a heavy, evaluating silence. The girls looked at each other again, that silent twin communication. Then, without a word, Mira stood. Noah followed. With an impressive dignity for children so young, they walked to the bedroom they shared, quietly closing the door behind them. They didn't slam the door. They didn't run. They didn't cry. They just left. Jasper remained on the couch, stunned, staring at the empty space where the girls had been. "Give them time," Mrs. Elsa said, breaking the weighty silence. "It's a lot to process. I ruined everything," he murmured, running his hands over his face. "I should have told them sooner, or later, or differently." "There's no perfect way for this kind of news," the older woman replied wisely. "They're children, but they're not foolish. They need to think it through. What if they never accept me? What if they never forgive me for not being there?" Mrs. Elsa gave a sad smile. "That's a risk every parent takes, isn't it? That the children might never forgive our mistakes. Most parents get the chance to mess up when the kids are too young to remember." Jasper nodded, understanding the harsh truth in her words. "Can I try talking to them?" "Tomorrow," Mrs. Elsa replied firmly. "Give them tonight, and give yourself tonight too." Reluctantly, but recognizing the wisdom in her words, Jasper stood. Before leaving, he looked at the closed bedroom door, wanting to say something or do something to fix what felt irreparably broken, but there weren't enough words. "I'll come back tomorrow," he promised Mrs. Elsa. "They'll be here," she replied. "They always will." The drive back was a blur. Jasper barely registered the streets, cars, or people. In his luxurious apartment, silence greeted him like an unwanted acquaintance. For weeks, that silence was just the backdrop of his solitary life. Now, after hearing the girls' laughter, answering their endless questions, listening to their made-up stories, the silence was almost physical, painful, a constant reminder of what he still didn't truly have and what he could lose forever. He walked over to the shelf where he kept the drawings the girls made for him. He picked up the most recent one, a picture of him with the two of them hand in hand under a starry sky. At the top, in colorful, clumsy letters, it read, "The nice man with Mira and Noah. Not Dad, not our father, just the nice man." And now he might not even be that in their eyes. He sat in the growing darkness of his apartment, still holding the drawing, understanding a cruelly ironic truth. In just a few weeks, those two little children had conquered a place in his heart that nothing else ever had. Not money, not success, not professional achievements. Nothing had ever filled the void he didn't even realize he carried, until two small hands colored in crayon showed him what he was missing. And now, knowing what he wanted, finally grasping what truly mattered, he might have lost it all. His phone rang, pulling him from his somber thoughts. It was his assistant, reminding him of an important meeting the next day. "Cancel," he said without hesitation. "Cancel everything for a few days." "Mr. Reeve, is everything all right?" The voice on the other end sounded genuinely concerned. "No," he answered honestly, surprising himself. "But I hope it will be." That night, Jasper didn't work. He didn't review contracts, didn't check emails, didn't make a single business call. He merely sat, watching the night sky through his huge window, thinking about falling stars and unfulfilled promises, about how silence, which had never bothered him before, now felt like an open wound, and how he would give anything, his fortune, his company, his carefully constructed life, just to hear Mira call him the nice man again, or see Noah's shy smile as she showed him a new drawing. His daughters, who might never truly be his. 3 days passed since his confession, 3 days of silence and absence that felt longer than entire years of his old life. He called Mrs. Elsa every day, asking about the girls. "They're okay," was all she'd say. "They need time." Time. As if he hadn't already lost too much time. On the morning of the 4th day, Jasper made a decision. He would not show up with gifts or treats, trying to buy his way back into the girls' hearts. He wouldn't wear his impeccable suit as armor against vulnerability. He'd bring nothing but himself, whole, imperfect, honest. Wearing jeans and a simple shirt, he dismissed the driver and walked to Mrs. Elsa's house, feeling the late afternoon sun on his face. With every step, he rehearsed what to say. At every corner, he braced himself for rejection. When he knocked, Mrs. Elsa opened the door herself. There was a new respect in her tired gaze, as though Jasper's deliberate absence these past days had passed some silent test. "They're in the backyard," she said, before he could ask. With his heart pounding, Jasper crossed the small house. He stopped at the back door, observing the scene for a moment. Mira and Noah sitting on the patchy grass, arranging little colored stones into patterns only they understood. They weren't playing with the same energy as before. Their movements were reserved, as though weighed down by seriousness beyond their years. Jasper took a deep breath and opened the door. The slight creak alerted them to his presence. Both raised their heads simultaneously, their small faces serious like he'd never seen. "Hi," he said simply. There was no practiced speech for this moment. The girls didn't respond, only watched as he approached and sat on the grass, close enough to talk but far enough to respect their space. For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the breeze rustling the leaves of the old tree that held the makeshift swing. "You're still mad at me," Jasper said finally. It wasn't a question. Mira, ever direct, nodded. "You lied." "Yes, I did, and I'm sorry." "Why did you come today?" Noah asked, her voice small but clear. Jasper looked at his own hands for a moment, gathering courage. When he looked back at them, there was no more commanding businessman, just a man trying to find his way in the most important negotiation of his life. "I came because I want you to know something important," he said. "I am your father, and I'm not giving up. I'm not disappearing." The girls exchanged glances, that silent twin communication that fascinated him. "You say that now," Mira replied, her voice carrying a sad wisdom beyond her years. "But you left, Mom. Will you leave us too?" The question hit Jasper like a physical blow. He hadn't expected such clarity, such insight. Without thinking twice, he knelt on the grass, so his eyes were at their level. The man who rarely bowed to anyone now intentionally placed himself below two little children's gaze. "Never again," he promised, voice firm despite the emotion threatening to break it. "I'll never walk away again, from you or from anyone I love." "How can we believe you?" Noah asked, her wide, serious eyes fixed on him. It was a fair question, one he had asked himself countless times. How could they trust the promise of a man who, until a few weeks ago, they didn't even know existed? "You can't," he admitted, surprising them with his honesty. "Not yet. Words are easy. Promises get broken every day." Jasper held out his hands, palms up, a gesture of openness that went against all his instincts of self-preservation. "I can't prove with words that I'll stay. All I can do is show you, day by day, until you believe. And even if you never fully believe, even if there's always a little doubt, I'll keep trying. Because you're worth the effort." The girls looked at his outstretched hands, then at each other, as if making a collective decision in their silent language. "Mom said you were too busy for us," Mira commented, without malice, just stating a fact. "I was," Jasper agreed, "too busy with things I thought mattered. Money, power, success. I had to lose your mum, and almost lose you to learn what really matters." A silence followed, no longer tense but thoughtful. The girls seemed to weigh his words, judging them not with childish naivete, but with the seriousness of those who already know too much loss to accept empty promises. "If you really are our dad," Noah said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "you'll have a lot to learn." Jasper felt a small spark of hope in his chest. "Like what?" "How to braid hair properly," she replied, "and how to tell stories without looking at the book," Mira added. "And staying when we're sick," Noah concluded. "And not working so much," Mira pointed an accusing finger at him. With each new demand, Jasper's heart expanded. They weren't impossible conditions or outright rejections, they were a chance, a slightly open door to a world he had nearly lost forever. I'll learn all of that, he promised. And much more you can teach me. Silence followed, laden with possibilities. Then, surprising everyone, including herself, Noah, the shy, cautious one, stepped forward and touched one of Jasper's still outstretched hands. She didn't hold it, just touched it, as if testing its solidity. "If you break your promise," she began. "We'll be really sad," Mira finished, coming forward to touch his other hand. There, kneeling on the grass in a simple backyard, with two small hands resting lightly on his, Jasper felt something he'd never experienced before. A connection stronger than any contract, more valuable than any fortune. "I won't break it," he said, voice husky with restrained emotion. "This is the only promise that truly matters." Mrs. Elsa watched from the kitchen window, her tired eyes bright with unshed tears. She knew life well enough not to believe in perfect endings, but she recognized a genuine beginning when she saw one. Jasper remained on his knees, gently holding the girl's hands, as if they were made of precious crystal. He had spent a lifetime seeking control over his emotions, his business, his environment. Now he discovered the paradoxical power of surrender, of utter vulnerability. "What happens now?" Mira asked, as practical as he was in the boardroom. "Whatever you want," Jasper answered. "We can go at your pace, you decide." The girls seemed surprised. Rarely did adults give them true power to choose. "Can we think about it?" Noah asked, always cautious. "Take all the time you need," Jasper assured them. They moved a few steps away, forming a small private circle where they whispered to each other. Jasper waited, more patient than he'd ever been in his life. When they returned, there was a renewed determination on their small faces. "We decided," Mira announced, taking the role of spokesperson. "You can keep being our friend for now, and later, if you don't disappear, maybe you can be our dad." The simplicity of the proposal almost broke Jasper completely. So direct, so sincere, and infinitely more generous than he deserved. "I accept," he replied, with the same solemnity he'd used to seal the biggest deal of his life. "Friends first, and I'll work every day to earn the right to be your dad afterward." They both nodded, satisfied with the agreement. Then, in a gesture that took Jasper by surprise, Mira approached and extended her hand for a formal shake. "Deal," she said, with comical seriousness. Jasper shook the small hand solemnly. "Deal." Noah, not wanting to be left out, extended her hand as well. "Deal twice." When the three walked back inside, Mrs. Elsa awaited them with a pitcher of orange juice and cookies. There was a lightness in the air that hadn't been there for days. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not an instant happy ending. It was simply a new start, a promise yet to be fulfilled, a future still to be built, day by day. "Will you stay for dinner?" Mrs. Elsa asked, giving him a knowing smile. Jasper glanced at the girls, now sitting at the kitchen table, meticulously dividing a cookie into equal parts. "If I'm invited," he replied. "We're inviting you," Mira said, not even looking up from her important task. And so, in a small kitchen of a humble home, a new family arrangement was born, imperfect, fragile, built on promises that still needed proving, but real. As real as the man who, reborn in that grassy backyard, was now learning the greatest lesson of his life. That true success isn't measured by money or power, but by one's ability to love and be loved in return. An autumn Sunday, the sky clear of clouds, the temperature just right. Jasper was driving his own car, a rare thing for him, with the girls in the back seat properly secured in booster seats he'd bought the previous week. Through the rearview mirror, he watched their excited faces as they chatted in a semi-secret language only they seemed to fully understand. "Are we there yet?" Mira asked for the third time in 10 minutes. "Almost," Jasper replied patiently, something he'd learned to cultivate in the last few weeks. "Look out the window. You can already see the Ferris wheel." The girls stretched, wide-eyed, trying to see beyond the buildings. When they finally spotted the colorful structures of the amusement park, a chorus of oohs and ahs filled the car. Jasper smiled. 15 days had passed since the promise made in the backyard. 15 days of small steps, of gradual rebuilding. The girls, little by little, were warming up to him again, They still didn't call him Dad, not yet, but they no longer treated him as a stranger. They were in that in-between stage they'd proposed. Friends. Friends who might one day be more. When he parked the car, Jasper felt butterflies in his stomach. It was his first big outing with them, without Mrs. Elsa around as a safety net. A whole day under his responsibility. The man who ran board meetings with an iron fist was now nervous about managing 2 young children in a crowded park. What if he lost sight of one? What if they got hurt? What if... Let's go. Mira was already unfastening her booster seat, impatient. Calm down, sweetheart, he said, stepping out to help them. We have the whole day. On the way to the entrance, he laid down the ground rules. Always hold hands, never wander off, speak up if they needed the bathroom, let him know if they felt hungry or tired. The girls nodded, solemn. But Jasper knew they'd forget everything the second excitement took over. Their first stop was the food court just inside the gates. The girls scanned the options with saucer-sized eyes. You can pick whatever you want, Jasper said, feeling an odd pleasure at their excitement. Anything, Noah asked, as if it were a revolutionary concept. Anything, he confirmed. They ended up with an improbable breakfast, cotton candy, hot dogs, and juice. Jasper repressed the urge to insist on something more nutritious. Today was about fun, not rules. Proper nutrition could wait one day. The park was a burst of color, sound, and movement, and children ran about. Adults tried to keep up. Music blared from strategically placed speakers. For Jasper, used to the order and silence of his office, it was almost overwhelming. For the girls, it was paradise. They started with the tamer rides, the carousel, with bright horses bobbing to a cheerful tune, the funhouse, with distortion mirrors that made the girls double over laughing at Jasper's tiny head and giant legs, the kiddie train that circled the entire park, giving them a preview of the bigger rides ahead. I want that one, Mira pointed to a kid-friendly roller coaster. Jasper swallowed hard. Roller coasters weren't exactly his favorite, but Mira's hopeful smile was too persuasive. Let's go, he agreed, holding each girl's hand firmly. To his surprise, it was less terrible than he feared. The girls' joyful screams on each drop were enough to offset any discomfort. Even Noah, usually so quiet, yelled, "Wee!" at the top of her lungs, while Mira alternated between yippee and hysterical laughter. After the second go-around, they disembarked, and Jasper realized something unusual. His face hurt from smiling. He couldn't remember the last time he'd grinned so freely, without calculation or restraint. Simply happy. The day continued in a colorful whirlwind. Ice cream melting down small fingers, ring toss games where Jasper discreetly missed a few times so the girls could win prizes, hats with animal ears that he would never have worn in any other scenario, but now sported proudly, matching the girls. And photos, dozens of them taken on his phone. The girls making faces, hugging each other, smiling with chocolate-stained mouths. The man who once only took photos at corporate events now documented every grin, every expression of awe, every moment of unfiltered childhood joy. After lunch, burgers and fries, another nutritional concession, they headed to the water rides area. Jasper had come prepared with spare clothes and towels, as always anticipating even the unlikeliest scenarios. Careful, the ground is slippery, he warned, walking over wet pavement. But his warning came a second too late. Noah, always clumsier than her sister, tripped over her own feet and fell, scraping her knee on the rough ground. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, like a dam breaking, the tears came. Not hysterical, not loud, just quiet sobs, like everything else about Noah. Jasper felt a wrenching in his chest like never before. Instantly, he was kneeling beside her, carefully examining the minor scrape. A bit of blood, nothing serious. But for Noah, in that moment, it was the end of the world. Let's clean that up, okay, he said, scooping her gently into his arms and taking her to a nearby bench. Using the bottled water he carried, he rinsed the wound. With a clean handkerchief from his pocket, he dabbed it dry. Each movement was performed with a gentleness he hadn't realized he possessed, as though handling the most fragile crystal. It hurts, Noah murmured, between sobs, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. I know, he replied, softly blowing on the scrape. "But it'll get better soon. You know what my mum used to do when I got hurt." The girls both looked at him, curious. It was the first time he'd mentioned anything about his own childhood. "She used to sing a silly song. She said the song would scare the pain away." "What song?" Mira asked, forgetting for a moment the roller coaster she wanted to try next. Jasper hesitated. Sing in public. He, who never even hummed in the shower. But Noah's distressed face was stronger than his embarrassment. So the man who ran one of the biggest companies in the country, sitting on a bench in an amusement park, began to softly sing a lullaby his mother used to sing decades ago. His naturally deep voice sounded odd in the childish melody, off-key in the high notes. But there was something, maybe the honesty, that made Noah stop crying almost immediately. First came the surprise on her face, then a small smile through the tears still trailing down her cheeks, and then, to Jasper's astonishment, a giggle. "You sing really badly," Mira observed, brutally honest as always. "I do," he agreed, laughing as well. "Really, really badly." "But I liked it," Noah said, her voice growing steadier. "The hurt is going away now." And it was. Both the physical pain, mild from the start, and something deeper, a distance, a hesitation that still lingered between them, even in the best moments of recent weeks. Jasper helped Noah stand, testing her leg. When she took an experimental step and smiled, declaring she was almost fine, he felt something loosen inside his chest. A certainty that arrived unannounced, but with the force of an absolute truth. He was a father. Not just biologically, not just on paper. A father in the truest and fullest sense of the word, and for the first time, that was all he wanted to be. Daylight broke with a golden hue, like a silent promise. Jasper woke up early after a night of deep reflection. Since the amusement park outing, something had shifted within him. A certainty that grew with every smile, every small moment shared with the girls. Sitting in his home office with a cup of coffee growing cold beside him, he reviewed the documents his lawyer had prepared. Recognition of paternity. So many formal words to describe something so profoundly personal. His signature on those papers wouldn't just change the girl's last name, it would officially transform what his heart already knew. He was Mira and Noah's dad. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Mrs. Elsa, her voice sounding unusually weak. "Jasper? Sorry to bother you so early, but..." Something in the pause, in her shaky breathing, made Jasper sit up straight, all senses on alert. "What happened? Are the girls okay?" Yes, they're at school. It's just that I'm feeling a bit unwell. Nothing serious, just a little dizziness." Jasper was already on his feet, grabbing his car keys. "Don't move. I'm coming over." He made it to the small house in record time. Mrs. Elsa was seated at the kitchen table, trembling hands wrapped around a glass of water. Her face, usually rosy, was pale with a slight sheen of sweat on her forehead. "It's just fatigue," she tried to dismiss. "I haven't had much appetite lately, must be my age." Jasper frowned. Over the past days, he'd noticed small changes in Mrs. Elsa. The slow way she got up, her barely touched dinner plate, how often she needed to sit and rest. "How long have you been feeling like this?" She shrugged. "Comes and goes, sometimes better, sometimes worse. You need to see a doctor. I can't leave the girls alone. And my health plan expired. I didn't renew it because I had to buy their school supplies and..." Jasper raised his hand gently to interrupt her. "That's not a problem. I'll call my doctor right now." She tried to protest, but another wave of dizziness cut her short. Resigned, she nodded. 2 hours later, they were at Dr. Bennett's office, one of the city's most respected physicians. After a series of preliminary tests, he asked to speak with Jasper in private. "I strongly suspect uncontrolled diabetes," he explained. "Her blood pressure is very high, and the symptoms are quite indicative. We'll need more comprehensive tests, but I recommend immediate hospitalization to stabilize her." Jasper nodded, feeling a pang of guilt. How hadn't he noticed sooner? The girls depended on Mrs. Elsa, and she, though she'd never admit it, needed help. When he returned to the exam room, Mrs. Elsa seemed to read the worry on his face. "It's serious, isn't it?" she asked. "It's treatable," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "But the doctor recommends a few days in the hospital to adjust your medication." "And the girls? Who'll pick them up from school? Who'll cook dinner? There's a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow, and I'll take care of everything," Jasper interrupted. "All of it, okay? You just focus on getting better." While the ambulance took Mrs. Elsa to the hospital, Jasper made a series of calls. He cancelled all his meetings for the week, notified the school that he'd be picking the girls up, called a cleaning service to ready the guest rooms at his apartment. In the afternoon, when the twins got out of school, they saw Jasper waiting at the gate instead of Mrs. Elsa. "Where's Mrs. Elsa?" Mira asked immediately, worry etched on her small face. Jasper knelt to their level. "She's feeling a bit sick." "Nothing too serious, but she needs a few days in the hospital so the doctors can take good care of her." "Is she going to die?" Noah's voice was a barely audible whisper, her fear of another loss transparent in her eyes. "No, sweetheart," Jasper quickly assured her. "She'll be fine. She just needs treatment and rest." "Can we see her?" Mira asked. "Of course. We'll visit her now. And then, if you want, you can stay at my apartment until she gets back home." The girls nodded, clutching his hands tightly. At the hospital, Mrs. Elsa was already settled in a private room, hooked up to monitoring equipment. Though pale, she smiled when she saw the children. "My little stars," she murmured as they climbed carefully onto the bed to hug her. During the visit, Jasper observed their interaction, feeling both intrusive and protective. The bond between Mrs. Elsa and the girls was palpable, born of shared loss and unconditional love. When the nurses came to administer medication, Jasper took the girls to the cafeteria for hot chocolate, giving Mrs. Elsa a moment of privacy. "Is she going to be okay?" Noah asked again, stirring her drink without sipping. "Yes," Jasper promised. "She has diabetes, which means her body can't handle sugar properly. But there's medicine for that, and she's strong." "Like our mum?" Mira asked. The question caught Jasper off guard. It was the first time they'd mentioned Camilla spontaneously to him. "Yes," he answered softly. "Strong, like your mum." Later, when the girls fell asleep in chairs by the hospital bed, Jasper had a moment alone with Mrs. Elsa. "Things are going to change," she said, looking at the children. "You were ready to acknowledge them, weren't you? I saw the papers on your desk this morning." Jasper nodded. "I still am. But I don't want you thinking I'm trying to replace anyone." Mrs. Elsa gave a sad smile. "Camilla is gone, Jasper. No one can replace her. And me, I'm old. I have to be realistic. I know how important you are to them," Jasper said, taking her wrinkled hand in his. "And I know I can never fill the role you've played. I don't want to take them away from you. I just want to add to what they have." Mrs. Elsa moved, squeezed his hand. "You're not taking anything away, you're giving back what they lost. Just don't let them run out of love and ever." "I'll take care of you too," Jasper promised. "Because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't even know they exist." They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the two small figures sleeping. Each child carried traces of Camilla, echoes of the woman both had loved in different times of their lives. The next morning, while the girls were at school, Jasper visited his lawyer. The documents for paternity recognition still lay on the desk, waiting for his signature. With a heavy but unwavering heart, Jasper signed every page. He was sure he would no longer be just a visitor, no longer the nice man. He would be their father, legally, officially, fully. And as the lawyer gathered the papers, promising to file them immediately, Jasper felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a weight he hadn't known he was carrying. It was time to build a family, an unconventional one, surely, but a real one. A family bound not only by blood ties, but by conscious choices and promises that, this time, would be kept. The transformation of Jasper's apartment began the day after he signed the paternity papers. In a life dedicated to work, he never imagined his greatest accomplishment would be creating a home for two little girls and an elderly woman. First to change was the upper floor, previously home to a sterile office and two impersonal guest rooms. Architects and decorators were urgently called in with an unusual request. Convert coldy, minimalist spaces into warm, child-friendly environments, and quickly. "I want pink," Jasper explained awkwardly to the interior designer, flipping through color catalogs. "Not just any pink, the pink they like." To his surprise, the man smiled with understanding. "I know that request well. I have 2 daughters too." It was the first time anyone recognized him as a fellow father. The sensation was both strange and comforting. While work progressed at home, Jasper divided his time between the hospital, where Mrs. Elsa was responding well to treatment, and the temporary apartment he'd rented to stay with the girls. Nights were filled with stories, homework, dinners, and gradually a new routine established itself. "Will there be space for our drawings?" Mira asked one evening as she drew on a pad. "All of them," Jasper promised. "An entire wall if you want." Noah, more reserved, simply watched, as if trying to fully grasp this new version of life. Sometimes, Jasper caught her gazing at the night sky from the window, as if searching for someone among the stars. "Do you think Mum would like our new home?" she asked one night, her small voice almost lost in the bedroom silence. Jasper sat beside her on the bed. "I think she would," he answered honestly. "For your mum wanted nothing more than for you both to be happy and safe." Noah nodded, turning her eyes back to the stars. "Will Mrs. Elsa live with us too?" "She will," Jasper confirmed. "At least for now, until she's completely recovered." The girl smiled, a first genuinely relaxed smile Jasper had seen on her face since his confession. After 2 weeks of intense renovations, the apartment was ready. Jasper hadn't let the girls see it. He wanted to surprise them. On the day Mrs. Elsa was discharged from the hospital, he took all 3, with their eyes covered, to the front door. "Ready?" he asked, holding the girls' hands while Mrs. Elsa smiled in anticipation. When the blindfolds came off, silence reigned before the reaction. The once cold, impersonal apartment had been transformed. The entry hall, once dominated by an expensive abstract sculpture, now featured an entire wall of photographs, Mira and Noah at the park, at school, with Mrs. Elsa, with Jasper. Interspersed were old photos of Camilla, which he'd found among the belongings Mrs. Elsa had kept. "Come on," he said, guiding them through the hallway. The living room, once minimalist and grey, now had warm colors, comfortable sofas, and a shelf full of children's books. But the biggest reactions came when they saw the bedrooms. For the girls, a large shared room with 2 shades of pink on the walls, one brighter for Mira's side, one softer for Noah's. Twin beds with canopies, shelves of carefully chosen books and toys, and an entire wall ready to display their drawings. "Is this for us?" Mira asked, her usual confidence shaken by surprise. "All yours," Jasper confirmed. Noah walked around the room in silence, gently touching each item as if afraid it would vanish. She stopped before a framed blank canvas on the wall with a little plaque reading, "My first drawing in the new home." "Can we draw right now?" she whispered. "Right now and always," Jasper replied. For Mrs. Elsa, the surprise was even greater. In place of the old office, a cozy suite opened onto a little balcony turned into a winter garden. Plants of all types, chosen specifically to purify the air and create a calm space, surrounded a comfortable armchair near the window. "For your reading time," Jasper explained, noticing the emotion in her eyes. "And there's a special call button in case you need help at night." "You thought of everything," she murmured, gently touching a fern. "I tried," he said sincerely. "I want you to feel at home, for as long as you like." They officially moved in the next day. There wasn't much to bring from the old house, some clothes, favorite toys, the few mementos of Camilla. Jasper had made sure the rest would be replaced with new. Mrs. Elsa, following the doctor's orders, soon found her place in the new routine. Jasper hired a nurse to help with her medication and accompany her to follow-up appointments when he couldn't be there, though he insisted on being present whenever possible. "I never thought a man in your position would waste time taking an old lady to the doctor," she commented at one appointment. "I'm not wasting time," he corrected her gently. "I'm gaining a family." Evenings in the new home followed a clear schedule: dinner together, homework at the dining table, bath time, and a bedtime story. Jasper discovered he especially liked the last part, when the girls, already in pajamas, chose a book and snuggled up beside him to listen. During the first week, the nights were still somewhat restless. Sometimes he'd hear soft footsteps in the hallway, one of the girls seeking out Mrs. Elsa for reassurance in the midst of so many changes. It was on one of those nights Jasper had an idea. He bought a special projector that, when turned on, covered the bedroom ceiling with a near-real starry sky. "So you don't have to look out the window anymore to see the stars," he explained as he set it up. "Now they can be right here with you." That night, after their usual bedtime story, as he rose to leave, he felt two small hands tugging at his arms. "Stay," Mira asked, "just for a bit." Without hesitation, Jasper lay down on the floor between their beds, looking up at the artificial stars projected on the ceiling. "Now you have a home," he whispered, feeling two little hands slip into his. "And so do I." The girls didn't respond with words, but they scooted closer, one on each side, as though in that space between the beds, they finally shared a full, unspoken bond. For the first time, while they all gazed at the stars on the ceiling, Jasper felt they weren't so distant or unreachable anymore. Now they shone within arm's reach, pulsing in time with his newly discovered father's heart. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into a month. Almost imperceptibly, Jasper's apartment ceased to be just a renovated space decorated for children and became a true home. The change wasn't only in the painted walls or the new furniture, but in the small, everyday details that arose, invisible marks of shared life. The sleek media console in the living room, once arranged with carefully selected design pieces, now held a growing collection of colorful rocks that Noah picked up in the park. "Magic stones," she explained seriously. "Each one protects us from a different monster." The kitchen, which had rarely seen anything but coffee or delivered meals, was now filled with the aroma of cookies and cakes. Regaining her strength day by day, Mrs. Elsa insisted on teaching the girls simple recipes. Jasper would often return from meetings to find flour scattered across the floor, laughter echoing in the hallway, and three proud faces presenting culinary creations in odd shapes but with surprisingly good flavor. "Try it. It's delicious," Mira would urge, while Noah observed anxiously, waiting for his reaction. Jasper, who once chose restaurants based on Michelin ratings, now savored crooked cookies piled high with chocolate icing as if they were the finest delicacy. His home office, previously an untouchable sanctuary of work, underwent especially drastic changes. It began with a few drawings taped to the wall beside his desk. Then came shiny star stickers placed on his computer monitor. One day, he found his keyboard decorated with tiny stickers. "It's prettier now," Mira declared, proud of her contribution to the office's aesthetic. Instead of removing them, as he might have done without thinking weeks prior, Jasper just smiled, discovering that typing on keys adorned with unicorns and rockets didn't diminish productivity in the least. Video conferences gained a new element of surprise when a curious little head occasionally peeked into the screen, waving at astonished executives. Rather than feeling embarrassed, Jasper felt an odd surge of pride when he had to briefly pause to answer urgent questions like where the purple crayon was, or whether another cookie before dinner was allowed. "I apologize for the interruption," he would say formally, then add with a smile his colleagues rarely saw, "Family matters. Family." A word once absent from his vocabulary now regularly punctuated his daily conversations. The nicknames started almost by accident. One morning, while he attempted to braid Noah's hair, terribly, despite watching tutorial videos, Mira burst out laughing. "You look like a bear trying to sew," she said through giggles. From then on, he became Bear whenever he seemed clumsy or too big for the delicate domestic tasks. "Bear, can you reach that book up there?" "Watch out, Bear, you're gonna spill the juice again." Noah, more perceptive, created the second nickname. On a rainy afternoon, Jasper came home soaked because he'd given the umbrella to the girls when leaving school. She looked at him with those big, serious eyes and declared, You're like the protective knight in the story, Mrs. Elsa tells. Thus, Knight emerged for those moments of caring, protection, and little kindnesses that didn't escape Noah's watchful heart. "Good night, Knight," she whispered each evening when he turned out their bedroom lights. Jasper, who'd spent a lifetime being addressed as Sir, Boss, and other formal titles, realized that none felt as honorable as the nicknames invented by his daughters. The word still gave him pause, as though it were too big and important to fit into the meticulously ordered life he once had. Yet now, it fit perfectly into this new world of organized chaos, unexpected laughter, and impossible questions, like why clouds don't fall down, or whether fish sleep with their eyes closed. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, about a month and a half after the move, Jasper worked in his office, trying it unsuccessfully to ignore the rainbow stickers on his calculator. The girls were in the living room, stacking cushions, chairs, and sheets into an elaborate construction that took up half the space. "Move it more this way? No, it's gonna fall." Mira's voice directed the operation, while Noah carefully adjusted each element. Jasper smiled and returned to his financial reports. A few minutes later, he heard quick footsteps in the hallway and Mira's excited voice at his office door. "Dad, come see the castle we built." Dad. The world stopped. The air stuck in his lungs. The letters on his computer blurred into meaningless shapes. Dad, not Bear, not Knight, not Mr. or Jasper. Dad. With hands suddenly trembling, Jasper pushed his chair back and stood. He opened the office door, seeing Mira hopping with excitement, oblivious to the revolution she'd caused with a single three-letter word. "Hurry! We made a magic castle. It even has a flag," she continued, tugging him by the hand. Jasper let her lead him silently, feeling a warmth rise in his throat and press behind his eyes. In the living room, Noah stood by their elaborate fortress of draped sheets over the couch and chairs, decorated with taped-up drawings. "We made a throne for you," she explained shyly, "because every castle needs a king." "King Dad," Mira added, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. It was the combination, the carefully built castle, the makeshift throne of cushions, and that word, Dad, spoken so casually that finally tore down his last barrier. Tears, which he hadn't allowed since adolescence, escaped without warning, rolling silently down his cheeks. Mira and Noah froze, their growing alarm clear. "You don't like it?" Noah asked, her small voice trembling slightly. Jasper shook his head, speechless for a moment. He knelt down, opening his arms wide. "I love it more than you can imagine," he managed at last. The girls approached tentatively. Mira, always the bolder, touched one of his tears with her fingertip. "Then why are you crying?" "Because," Jasper took a deep breath, trying to explain the inexplicable. "Sometimes when something is so good it feels like it'll burst inside of you, it comes out in tears." Noah tilted her head, thinking over this new information with her usual seriousness. "Like when Mrs. Elsa cries watching those TV shows where people find each other." "Exactly," Jasper agreed. Slowly, like timid animals approaching the unknown, both girls stepped into his open arms. The hug was awkward, new, but perfectly right, like everything that had been happening over these last few months. "So you liked being called Dad?" Mira asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," Jasper replied, voice tight with emotion. And it was true. In a life filled with impressive titles, CEO, president, market leader, none sounded as extraordinarily right as that simple Dad. Sitting on the makeshift throne inside the sheet castle, with one girl on each side telling fantastic stories about queens and dragons, Jasper felt absolutely sure all the achievements, all the millions, all the successful ventures could not compare to this moment. This was true success, a real home, true love, love that had finally found its place. Fall painted the trees in golden tones as Jasper parked the car at the cemetery gates. It was a Sunday with clear skies and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the flowers the twins held, daisies and white roses, Camilla's favorites. The girls were unusually quiet, dressed in their best outfits. Mrs. Elsa, well enough for a short outing, held Noah's hand while Mira clung to Jasper's. "It's been a while since we came here," Mira commented, as they walked down the stone paths lined with headstones. "Did you come often?" Jasper asked, realizing there were still so many parts of his daughter's lives he didn't know. "Every month," Noah replied. "Mrs. Elsa used to bring us to tell Mom how we were growing." "And now we have lots of new things to tell," Mira added, looking up at Jasper with a smile that still took him by surprise. 3 months had passed since the move. 3 months of adjustment, discoveries, small steps forward and occasional steps back. The legal process of acknowledging the girls was almost complete. Soon, they wouldn't just be his daughters in his heart, but officially bearing his last name. Mrs. Elsa had become a permanent part of their family arrangement. After many discussions, they decided she would remain living with them, not as a nanny or housekeeper, but as an essential member of their newly formed family. Her health had improved significantly with proper care, and though she still needed monitoring, she now had color in her cheeks and renewed energy. Camilla's grave was simple, a white marble headstone bearing her name, dates, and the inscription, "Beloved Mother, Cherished Daughter, Eternal Star." Jasper felt his chest tighten at the dates. So few years, a life cut short too soon. The girls knelt calmly, placing their fresh flowers in the small built-in vase. They removed older flowers, wiped away some dried leaves. There was a sad familiarity in these gestures, a well-practiced ritual. "Hi, Mom," Mira began, speaking to the headstone as though talking to a friend. "We brought someone for you to meet. Well, you already know him, but now he's our dad." Jasper felt his throat constrict. The simplicity with which Mira announced the changes in their life moved him deeply. Noah, ever more reserved, simply placed her hand on the cold marble, a silent caress. Mrs. Elsa stepped back, giving them space for a private moment. Jasper understood and knelt beside the girls. For a moment, he said nothing, unsure of how to speak to someone who wasn't there yet, whose presence shaped everything around him. "Hi, Camilla," he finally said, feeling awkward. I got your letter, and I decided to act. I'm taking care of them, the way you deserved me to do from the start." He paused, words inadequate to express all he wished to say. How to thank her for raising such wonderful children alone, how to apologize for the lost years, how to promise he would make up for every day of absence. "They're extraordinary," he continued, voice steadier. "Just like you. I promise I'll give them my best every day. I won't give up. I won't fail them like I failed you." A tear slid down Noah's cheek, silent as her every move. Jasper put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Mira, on the other side, leaned against him too. "We're not alone anymore, Mom," Mira said to the headstone. "Now we're a family again." Jasper felt the weight of those words. A family. Something he'd never truly had, even with his privileged but emotionally distant upbringing. Something he was now building day by day with 2 children who taught him more about love than all his adult years ever could. "Thank you," he whispered to the white marble, "for them, for everything." They stayed a few minutes in silence. The girls told their mom about their new school, their pink-walled bedroom, and the star projector on the ceiling. Jasper listened, watching how they spoke so naturally, without the heavy burden of grief, but with a certainty that love continued. As they stood to leave, he looked back one last time. Camilla's grave, now adorned with fresh flowers, seemed less lonely under the golden autumn light. Mrs. Elsa waited a few steps away, tears glistening in her eyes. She smiled, though not with her lips, but with her gaze. A smile of acceptance, of completing cycles, of new beginnings possible even after endings. On the way home, the girls were quiet, each absorbing the experience in her own way. Jasper respected the silence, knowing that some emotions need space to settle. The following weeks brought a rhythm Jasper never imagined for himself, but that now felt like the only way to live. Morning pancakes in odd shapes. He tried to mold them into animals and mostly failed. Noah always set the table, folding napkins with perfect precision. Mira spun colorful tales about what might happen that day at school, most of them purely imagined. Mrs. Elsa supervised with a contented smile, occasionally stepping in to show Jasper how to cut sandwiches into triangles, because that's how they taste better. or reminding the girls to brush their teeth before leaving. Evenings turned into cherished moments. After dinner, they all gathered in the living room for a movie or board games. Jasper learned to lose at Uno gracefully, while Mira celebrated her wins with impromptu dances. Noah, more methodical, frequently won at memory games, which surprised no one. Bedtime became a carefully orchestrated ritual: baths, pajamas, teeth brushed, a story with voices for each character, as demanded by the girls, and finally, the star projector turned on, filling the ceiling with a nighttime sky. "Do you think Mom can see us from up there?" Noah asked one night, studying the projected stars. "I'm sure she can," Jasper said. "And I bet she's very proud of you both." "And of you too," Mira added, surprising him, "because you're being a good dad." Simple words, but they meant the world to him. One Saturday, while the girls played at the park and Mrs. Elsa rested on a bench in the shade, she called Jasper to sit beside her. "For you know, when Camilla died, I was so afraid for the girls' future," she admitted. "I had no idea how two little kids could overcome such a huge loss." Jasper nodded, watching his daughters run and laugh, seemingly carefree. "Children are astonishing," she went on, "but they need strong roots to grow strong. You gave them that, a home, security, love. I'm just trying to do what's right," Jasper said. "That's all any parent can do," the older woman smiled, "and it's more than enough." That night, after the girls were asleep, Jasper stood at his bedroom window. Outside, the starry sky sparkled. One star shone particularly bright on the horizon. He reflected on how much his life had changed. The man who once lived solely for numbers, contracts, and meetings now found his greatest satisfaction in clumsy braids, bedtime stories, and goodnight hugs. The apartment that was once a showcase of minimalist design was now a real home, with children's drawings on the fridge, toys occasionally forgotten under the couch, and smiling photos everywhere. He thought of Camilla and how he wished she could see her daughters now, happy, loved, secure. How he wished he could thank her personally for the letter that changed his life, for not poisoning the girls against him, for leaving the door open so that one day he might find his way back to the family he never knew he had. There, by the window, watching that particularly bright star, Jasper felt a strange sense of completion, as though a cycle that began years ago in a painful separation was finally closing in a new beginning. It wasn't a conventional family, of course, a former workaholic executive learning to be a father at 33. Two twins who had experienced too much loss for their age. An elderly lady granted a new lease on life when she least expected it. And the constant, though invisible, presence of a woman who united them all with her love, and paradoxically with her absence. Imperfect, wounded, rebuilt, whole. And now, it seemed the stars in the sky were smiling too. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.